Hello everyone. Looks like the ads just ended. Even though the stream has been going for 6 minutes and the ads last for 3. Alright, is my microphone working? Yes it is. Yes it is. Alright. Hello Jester, come on. We need you here. You're part of this meeting. I have my assistant here taking notes for this meeting. Hope that's okay. I'm also recording this meeting. Hope you don't mind. Alright, and today we're going to circle back on something that I am done speaking like this is a meeting. That was exhausting. I'm actually done with work for the week. I'm going to be taking the rest of the week off. Still going to be streaming, just not going to be working. That was enough circling back. We can circle back to next Monday. Although we are technically circling back because yesterday I did a prototype of what I'm building for real today. And I'm a little bit terrified that I'm not seeing the git markers indicating that this is modified. So, okay, no, they're just not appearing. Okay. Alright. That's just Z being weird, I guess. Or maybe because I have the wrong system selected. No? Well, we close Z and reopen it. It's already open. Maybe let's just reopen the new window. Yeah, Z saw me opening VS Code and was like, oh, so you want me to be more like her? I'll be more like her. And started glitching. Alright, it shows yellow now. Okay, there we go. Okay. There they are. These green lines that I added yesterday are not actually gonna stay here because they're very hard-coded ways of doing aliases in my system. For the file system, specifically. Which, I have to say, how long have I been working on the file system? Can I see? How many streams has it been? I can look at my VODs real quick. It's been at least 3 weeks of just mostly working on file system stuff. And honestly, I'm not minding it. The first one that's tagged as being from the file system is April 10th. Today's April 25th. So 2 weeks with 6 days in between. So really 1 week-ish of work. That's 9 days, really. 9 streams that I've been focusing entirely on the file system. That's longer than I usually work on a single feature. Although it's been a lot of different features, all involving the file system. Different Jira tickets, same epic. If you want to speak about it in never speak those words on a Saturday type of language. Alright. So yeah, yesterday I implemented this little proof of concept. Oh my god, I'm done talking corporate. I'm sorry. I cannot stop talking corporate now. It started as a joke and now I can't stop. Hello, King. Yeah, yesterday I built I built 2 new features into my operating system. Meant to both work as aliases. Meant to both where you have a file that isn't really a file, it just points to another file. Or folder. Now, technically this virtual file system kind of framework that I've been working, essentially this file, is supposed to work for both files and folders. But most of the code when I actually handle a folder is very hard-coded, so I'll have to fix that. Maybe we'll get to that today as well. Maybe that's gonna be part of what I do today. But what I did is I'm essentially aliasing this folder into any module that implements. Since this is very hard-coded, it's not really too well designed. any module that implements this virtual file system, going into the alias test folder into that module takes you to this path over here. And there's actually two different modules that can do that. So you can go to /temp/alias test, or you can go to /theme/alias test, and you will end up in the source code for my code editor. Saturday Cartoon Engineer time. FPGA RISC-V CPU and computer. Nice. RISC-V, someday. See, the problem with like streaming when you're working on one project is that I don't really work on completely separate projects. Sometimes I work on projects that I've worked on a 3D rendering engine, I've worked on a UI library, I've worked on a game, but all of it kind of relates back to the same thing. But I kind of want to work on something with RISC-V just to like see what the architecture is like. If I maybe want to make my system multi-architecture, it would be ARM and RISC-V. x86 needs to die. Unless somebody wants to do a pull request. I always say that. And nobody has, so. Looks like x86 is about to die. Oh no. RIP Bozo. But yeah, someday maybe, if I really feel like working on something completely separate, I'll work on a little hello world in RISC-V. Maybe even just assembly. That would be interesting to do. Just never that one. Never x86 assembly. Just RISC-V assembly. I don't think I've ever written pure assembly besides some very simple functionality. So that would be an interesting thing to do. Shall we make it a YouTube 15K subscriber special? Where it sounds like a really shitty special. 10K, port Doom. 15K, write a single file of assembly. Write hello world in RISC-V. That's really gonna encourage people to subscribe, isn't it? Yep. I'm still doing it, whatever. I was not gonna do anything for 15K, now I am. Be happy about that. Yeah, I looked at RISC-V, and it looks very similar to ARM. I don't know about the instructions, I don't know about the little details, I don't know about system registers, which are pretty important when it comes to an operating system. But ARM and RISC-V looked very similar. Yeah, x86 is just... Whenever someone new comes into the stream, assumes that my system is x86 and is like, are you in protected mode? I'm like, right, you people have to deal with that. I'm sorry for your... I'm sorry about that, but no. I don't even fully know what protected mode is, actually, and I'm very happy with that. Protected mode is 32-bit? Yes? No? It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. Use features such as segmentation, virtual memory, paging, and safe multitasking designed to increase the operating system's control over application software. I was thinking of like long mode, and that's 64-bit, right? See how little I know about this. Long mode is where a 64-bit operating system can access 64-bit instructions and registers. 16-bit protected mode programs. Long mode is 64, protected mode is 32, and real mode is 16. Oh. I thought this just like included these features that you couldn't access otherwise. That's interesting. All right, you know what? I'm gonna be fair to x86 before I start working on the file system stuff. Does anyone have a project where they have their boot sequence or whatever, where I can see the transition between the different modes? I'm assuming you have to do that in assembly. So does anyone have a project that they've worked on? I want to look at the assembly for that. I'm assuming. I'm assuming wrong. I was gonna say I'm assuming it's nothing too crazy, but I've seen people complain in my Discord about it. So I'm not exactly hopeful. Real mode to protected mode. Everyone does it slightly different. Alright, here we have some code. Nobody wanted to promote their own code, so here we have this instead. I just finished setting up a very bare bones bootloader for my OS, and now I'm trying to switch from protected mode and jump to the kernel. The kernel exists on the second sector and on. Can anyone help me with my code? I added comments to show where the confusion is. Alright, so initialize the bootloader in stack. Magic numbers all around. Start ax with 7c0. Add 288 to it. Then move ax into ss. Then put 1496 into sp, which I'm assuming is the stack pointer, maybe? Then another 7c0 into ax, and then put ax into ds. Then you call the kernel load. This is not even where the confusion starts. This is where the confusion starts. Holy shit. Alright, so I have no idea what this code does, and to be fair, maybe this person could have documented that code a little bit better. Like, to be fair, my code at first kind of looked like that too. But now, I don't have syntax highlighting for this for some reason, but I can do this. Where I can have hard-coded values, like this and this. No, I think these are actually pointers. But some places I do have masks, for example. And okay, I do have this, which is hard-coded. Hello, Peter. Yeah, these here, for example, they're hard-coded values, which are taken from here.
Channel.
So at the very least, it's a little bit cleaner. Maybe you can do the same thing in x86 assembly, and then you can make this code look a little bit better. And again, my code kind of suffers from that too. I kind of just forgot that it did. But even just the register names are kind of so weird. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 until 29. Then we have 30, which is the link register. We have stack pointer and program counter. And then we have special system registers like this one. Technically, it's more understandable when you have, at the very least, just simple names like these, but what the fuck is an ax? What's a ds? What's an ss? Is sp the stack pointer? Why are you loading 4096 into the stack pointer? Well, I guess we're in 16-bit mode, so you don't have a whole lot of space for the stack? Is that what's going on? I don't know. I'm confused, but that's a skill issue on my end. We have more 7C0s into ax, and then putting that into this shit again. This shit again with a D. Then 2 into a. And 1 into al. And you push a word. Push and pop would be really useful to have, I'm not gonna lie. I think they exist in like embedded ARM, but not in normal ARM. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like, yeah, I don't think, maybe they just don't exist in ARM v8. I don't know. Zord bx with itself. Then 2 into x. and 0 into ts. Then int 13 interrupt. And then kjump and kfail C, call print return. So I'm assuming that's in case there's an error. So move ksuck into C, call print. And I'm assuming ksuck and kfail are strings, right? So you're just moving those string pointers into si, which is probably the first argument to print. Yeah, here they are, kload, ksuck, and kfail. And then, yeah, so you loaded the ksuck, which is kernel loaded successfully. Then you switch to protected mode by doing crow ex, one ex or that, and then ex into crow. Alright, so you read from this register into this one, write a 1 into it to probably enable protected mode, and then write it back into the register. So CR0, I'm assuming, is a system register of some sort. I'm doing something similar here. Read current EL into X0, then compare it. Well, that's actually not one of the examples. Here, I think. Yeah, read from this register, or write it back.
Leok997
That's
followed your channel.
Kind of very normal type of instruction, I guess. And then that's it. But of course, this person is confused because they're not able to do it. And the response is this whole yap session, which I'm not super eager to read. I want to look at the print char. You move E into A. You move E into A. That's the only thing I could think of. And then compare all. Where are these registers coming from? The thing that has me confused is when you call print, you load the string into a register called si. When you use print, you use a register called a. And then when you're actually executing the looping part, you call a register called all. What the fuck? Control registers, CR0. Alright, that makes sense. That's the one that they were accessing before. General purpose registers. Oh. Okay. Look at that, look at that, look at that. Alright, so when they wrote into SI, they were writing into 16-bit version of the RSI or ESI source index for string operations. That is incredibly specific for a general purpose register. It's general purpose, but if you're working with strings, you use this one for strings. That's weird as shit. Okay, so source index and destination index. That explains the C and D. Didn't realize I was in it. SP is the stack pointer. I was right about that. Base pointer is the stack frame, yeah. Then we have these general purpose registers. You only get 8? You only get... I even had to double check my math. I had to do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You only get 8 registers. How do you people live like this? How do you live like this? My god. How do you live like this? I'm talking to my computer now because it's technically x86. What the fuck? What do you mean? 8 registers? And then you have an accumulator. These are, for general purpose registers, these are very specific registers. That's insane. I have to admit, I've complained about x86 a lot, and yet I never really looked at its assembly. I'm correct. I am correct. I am 100% correct. It might be a recommendation, but don't compilers work like that? Don't they probably follow the convention, like at the very least the most common compilers. Do you need to follow that convention when you're like you want to have binary interface compatibility? Is that maybe not? I don't even want to think about that too much. Like, does it matter if I just override this on my own time? If I use it for something else? I don't know, but that's insane. Actually, I do see them using racks all the time. And the EX all the time as well. Crazy, crazy shit. Crazy shit. Yeah, that's the thing. You can probably push it and get it back later, but it's crazy. If I want to use X16, I just use it. I just could... I could just do this. I just feel like using X16 for this. Watch it crash. Oh, wait. I hard-coded an error in there and I haven't gotten rid of it. It didn't crash. It didn't crash. It actually works. Okay. I was about to tank arms stuck. I didn't just do that. That easy. Hello, Dev. Alright, so we just went through this code for going from 16-bit mode to 32-bit mode. And mind you, ARM also has a 32-bit compatibility mode. It never had a 16-bit mode, but it has a 32-bit mode. It's opt-in, not opt-out. You start in 64-bit mode, and then you're like, hey, I need 32-bit mode. And it goes down to 32-bit mode, not up from 16 to 32 to 64. That's insane. How long do they plan on keeping this going? Like, in 30 years, we have 256-bit architecture CPUs, and we have to go through like 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. Like, is that gonna be a thing? That's crazy. I don't think we're ever gonna need even 128-bit architectures, but genuinely, what is the plan? To just keep adding stuff onto it? It's like anytime there's excavations in a European city, they end up finding Roman ruins. Except you have to go through the Roman ruins to get to the modern building. So it's not like that at all. Right, you need to have a global descriptor table. This is one thing that I heard people in my Discord complain about. More than one has switched over to ARM, by the way. You need a ring 0 32-bit code descriptor, a ring 0 32-bit data descriptor. You need a GDT segment, an IDT segment, a TCS segment. You probably want an LDT segment. Every process should have an LDT segment. Oh my god. I'm exhausted just from the first paragraph. Okay, so listen. First off, good job, Doug, because you very thoroughly answered this person's question, I believe. Yes, it was considered a valid answer, so good job for that. However, I do not care, and I'm actually a little bit scared of x86 assembly. And again, the more I look into it, the more right I am. So good job, but I don't care. Thank you, though. Let's go back to a sane system. There's nothing to be scared of when it comes to, I don't know about Risk. Again, maybe someday that I'm bored, I'm gonna do some Risk stuff. And maybe we'll even do multi-architecture, I don't know. But assembly for ARM is so simple. You have 0 through 30 as registers. I will admit, x30 is often used as a register, as a return address for functions, but it doesn't have a proper name. So that is one that you have to follow convention without explicitly being told about. That part kind of sucks. Besides that, you have 30 other registers that you can just access however you want. Maybe the only thing to keep in mind is register 19 is used by C++ to hold a pointer to this, pointer to the current object. That's C++ convention. That's not part of the assembly. Now you can just use them however you want. It's a reduced set architecture, so that means you don't have that many instructions. So yeah, it does make it a little bit slower. Also, I didn't even go into the instructions. I was just talking about the registers here. The instructions for x86 are also just as crazy as the rest of x86. Although, to be fair, more specialized instructions means you do things that in ARM can take you 2-3 instructions, you do in just one instruction. That can be pretty cool for x86, which makes it more performant overall. But honestly, the ARM architecture computer that I use the most is the Mac, which just blows any other computer out of the water in terms of performance and in terms of efficiency. That's an Apple thing. But yeah, just never had any issues with performance with it. It is more efficient, and it's just so much easier to work with. All right. All right, we're not doing assembly today. Luckily, I was just, well, I felt like I haven't seen a good horror movie in a while, so I decided to take a look at the x86 assembly instead. It's a bit of a horror documentation. You don't see that one in theaters a lot, but it's a nice genre nonetheless. Okay, working on a file system today. Not on x86, and I thank God for that every day. I actually haven't seen Nosferatu, I have to say. Probably should. It's probably on streaming right now. But no, I missed it when it came out, so I never got to see it. I've heard really good things about it. So yeah, I just like, I don't, when did it come out actually? December 25th. Yeah, I was a little bit busy celebrating Christmas that day, to be honest, so it was a little bit busy. I just spilled coffee. And it got all over my shirt. Great. That's what I get for mocking Intel. Alright, I'll be right back. Alright, let's ignore my clumsiness. And also the fact that during the first ad of the stream I was actually finishing my laundry. Which means I literally just did laundry and now I have to wash another shirt. That's fucking amazing. But maybe next time I can pay more attention when I'm drinking coffee. Anyway, Not gonna lie, it was also a little bit too hot to be wearing that. Systems engineer architect, is it worthwhile learning Java? I'm gonna give you a disclaimer that I haven't done enough Java to answer that question honestly. So don't take my answer in any serious manner. But is it ever worth learning Java for anything whatsoever? Probably not. I don't know. I actually don't know. See, Java runs in a virtual machine, which means it's not like you can do bare metal stuff with it. Well, technically, I guess. I genuinely don't know much about it. That I haven't done enough Java is enough of an answer? Yeah, that's fair. Actually, yeah. To be fair, it's not like I've done a whole lot of systems engineering, although I've tried making several game engines. Only now am I succeeding at that. And operating system, and only now am I succeeding at that. Both in C. I just like C too much. It has a garbage collector. See, I didn't even know that. So yeah, definitely that's enough of an answer, but also don't take anything I say seriously about Java. I didn't even know that it had a garbage collector. I genuinely don't remember the last time I wrote Java. I did it in college. And after college, a friend of mine got a job which he was working with Java, so I helped him out a little bit with like learning a few things. Yeah, so about 50 years ago was the last time I wrote Java. Yeah, I feel like Java is very common in college. Not entirely sure why, but yeah, it is. Also, Java applications are either the most boring enterprise software you've ever heard of, or Minecraft. It's those two. And frankly, I don't understand why Minecraft is done in Java. Probably Notch was used to writing very boring enterprise software before, so that he was like, yeah, I already know this language, might as well. Except he worked for like Candy Crush, so I don't think that's accurate, but I don't know. Okay. Let me actually get started on this thing. Alright, so yesterday I hard-coded an alias. Today I wanna properly code it. Right, but my code editor, which I now closed, accesses its own source code through the tmp alias test folder. And then main.c, which actually points to this main.c because of this hard-coded rule. If it's alias test, point to this instead. It's that simple. And we can see that it opens just fine. And I saw an error with my cursor in the code editor, so I don't want to edit it a whole lot, but god damn it, Linux. I can even save to the file through the alias. I sort of got pressing Command S used to work before, and now it opens this thing. Is that for screenshot? I bet it's not even Copilot powered.
Pavlov
Pathetic.
10Q followed your channel.
Pathetic. What do you mean your screenshot tool doesn't even have Copilot in it? It's 2026. Keep up with the times, Ubuntu. Fucking embarrassing. Anyway, there's also like a dedicated print screen button, just so we're all aware. But anyway, the way that this translation happens is very, very hard-coded. It's literally called hard-coded translation. And I'm not gonna lie, my system uses command, Linux uses control, and I'm starting to want to switch to command. to do stuff when I'm using Linux. Because also Mac uses command, and it's genuinely a better idea to use command. Linux just has this key that does barely anything. Anyway, the way that it works is when you open a file inside of this module, it checks for a translation. Is this the path? If so, return this one instead. Literally that simple. And if you did a translation, then what you're going to do is you're going to open that file entirely by talking to its module, doing operations through it directly. And that's going to give you a file descriptor, which you're going to hold internally. And you're going to give another file descriptor that you're going to send to whoever called you so that you can reference this alias. So essentially, the application talks to this module talks to the real module that has the file. The real module and the application and this module have a handle in between them to reference the file, and the application and this module have another handle, and then there's just translation happening there. That part is going to stay the same. That part works just fine. We'll just need to have some way of telling the system, hey, this is an alias, by the way, so before you do anything with it, resolve it. More so, it's just a matter of where does the alias point to. So we'll have to come up with that. And then we'll have to have some kind of translation table, right? Whenever you refer to file 666, you're actually referring to whatever this file descriptor points to. With AI advancements, corporate push to some text won't happen so often, or refactor legacy systems will be easy to do. I don't know about that. What do I think of Python? I find the fact that you have to enforce certain indentation weird. Even though I usually tend to follow indentation rules. It's not like I'm gonna write this code like this. This would compile and run just fine, but it's unreadable to me because this is part of this if, so it should be here. Python just enforces that, but absolutely fucking not. Python in the Linux kernel? I don't think you could, because Python is interpreted, so means that it doesn't compile to assembly. You need to run it through a virtual machine, essentially. So, no, not really. Python, Java, JavaScript, any language that runs in a virtual machine doesn't really work for operating systems because of that. If you wanted it to, you would have to make an entire compiler just to turn that into an assembly language. So that's... and into an assembled language, I mean. A compiled language. So, no, it wouldn't work. It works for scripting. Frankly, I would prefer if terminal scripting was done through Python than freaking Shell or literally anything else besides Shell or JavaScript. So maybe not everything else. Then again, I was thinking about that, and maybe I'm starting to understand where Shell is coming from. I just wish I had better syntax, but I'm starting to understand what it's coming from, so. Okay. Look. Ok. So, let's actually start building this thing. In order to have an alias, then we need to have a file that points to another file. And we need to have a table that translates file descriptors from the one that the application is using to the one that the module is using to refer to the real file, right? So the module acts as a proxy for us. And most importantly, yesterday someone pointed out the file system should tell you whether something is a link or not. an alias. I'm calling them aliases, but symlinks or hard links or whatever. I'm just calling them aliases. The file system should tell you whether something is an alias or not, but you should be able to access it normally. Right now it doesn't tell you, but again, the code editor can just access itself through this file, and it doesn't even know that this is not even the real path. I want to keep it that way, but also telling you, hey, by the way, we're giving you the information, but it is a link. All right. So, really all we need is this, which is the definition of a file inside of the file system. Needs to have a string or alias. This is what will be used to do this shit, to do these translations. And then we're just going to need some kind of table that again translates a file descriptor into another one. But that's... I have something like that actually already in the global file system. Because when you open a file, you're given an instance to that file. You're given file descriptor 32. Actually, they start at 256. So 280. That one points to this specific file. And 281, if you open it again, 281 is going to point to also this file, but they're different IDs. But internally, those IDs are then translated into the file ID, which is always the same. So I'm already kind of doing something like that with the translations and whatnot. So it shouldn't be too difficult to do this. But anyway, a module file can have an alias. Doesn't have to, can. And what we're going to need, first off, is we're going to need to make a... I'm comparing these signatures here. They're not exactly the same. That's not great. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to modify this function, signature. All right. To create the definition of a file inside of a file module, a file system module, you have the name of the file, how it is backed up, be that through virtual file system, physical, or an alias. Entry type, whether it's a file or a directory. Signature, which is a voluntary tag to indicate the type of data that it is. A buffer that backs up that, and alright, no, I'm not going to modify this one. I'm going to modify this one instead. That's probably better. I'm going to add data signature to it, because that's not a thing that it has. Actions and alias, where alias goes in here, and the data type... Oh, it was hard-coded before. Okay. Alright, so that should store the file's real path and the type of file that it is. I just need to modify wherever I've called this function, which is in like 2 places. Alright, so this is a complex entry for the theme to reload a file. Data sig command. That's the signature for the file, and then alias is just going to be an empty string. Like that. And the other place where I have the same thing is nowhere. I literally only have one complex entry. Nice, just want to check that everything compiles. Looks like it does. You're being extra slow today. Alright, thank you. Everything compiles. All right, so let's move on to now creating inside the temp folder. I'm going to create a complex entry. I'm going to call it alias test, which is what I'm using to refer to this thing here. It's a... I'm barely even using these, honestly. Like the backing type, that's not really useful for anything. Physical transform, I guess. It's going to be a entry directory. The data signature is unknown. You don't run any actions, any special actions when you access this. And the alias for it is going to be string from literal, this one here. Yep, like that. Wait, what did I change? All right. So instead of using this hard-coded translation, this code is... I'm going to comment it out because I might need it later. Whoops, I commented out too much, I think. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to comment this out. If it has an alias, we need to resolve the alias, which we can check by just doing alias length.
WC_Dosa followed your channel.
This is kind of where I need to consider like how to handle these actions.
Spirit 128 followed your channel.
But I might not care too much about that right now. I do need this code. So yeah, this stays.
The individuated mind followed your channel.
Alright, so when we have an alias, what we're going to do is we're going to open that aliased file. If we fail to open it, we're going to print an error. I do program for work as well, yes. And then if we succeed, we are going to create a new file descriptor, or like populate the file descriptor that we got for our the operation that we're trying to run. We are going to populate it with information that we got by opening the real file. Can we memcopy? Can we memcopy this thing? Let's see, the ID needs to be replaced. But if we memcopy, we just replace the ID. The size of the file will always be the same from the original. The cursor will be the same, the data signature will be the same, and even the cursor sync type, which is not implemented right now, that's for most... I'm going to use that for concurrent writes, which is not a thing that I need right now. But even that is going to be copied. So what I can do is I'm going to memcopy into the file descriptor from the aliased file descriptor, which we'll need to change that eventually, but not right now, with the size of a file. And then we're going to override the ID with whatever ID we want. And we're also going to include memory.h. So we have that. Cool. Now, the file ID should technically be calculated in the moment, but honestly, no need for that right now. Because I have this hard-coded part. Alright, so let's see. Now, aliasing to /temp/alias test does not work anymore, but it should, so that's a problem. But any other directory such as theme shouldn't work. But right now neither works, so whoops. Alright, just to be clear, when I make a complex entry and I pass an alias, the alias gets copied into it. And the temp file system creates a complex entry alias test which points to this. Yes. I would say that's correct. But I'm not so sure. That's just a note for later. It's not really relevant right now. Open with the alias data into alias file descriptor. Right, so I expect this to work. It's not saying it's aliased anywhere, so that's kind of a problem. Why? Path is alias test slash main.c. This is annoying as hell. Okay, I'm being kind of stupid in the way that I handle finding an entry, right? Because alias test is supposed to be a directory. But I mentioned earlier, this virtual file system technically has support for declaring a directory as such. Like, alias test is supposed to be a directory, but it doesn't really handle that correctly, and this is one of the cases for that. It's trying to compare the entire path, which is alias test main.c, against alias test, which fails. That is a problem. That is a problem. And not only that, but I haven't really come up with a system for declaring this type of thing. So really this whole eval entry thing is going to need to get a little bit better than it is. But it's kind of a different problem from the one that I'm facing right now. So let me instead sidestep this problem for now, fix the one that I'm working on, and then work on that one. Still doesn't fix it, so whatever. Wait, maybe I need to reload the code editor? That would be nice. Still nothing. But it failed to resolve aliens. Oh, okay, yep. Aliens? Did I say aliens? I forgot to hard code that here. Cool! It's aliased to home projects code brain code main.c. And then the system crashes with a translation fault on this address for reasons. Why? I'm assuming it's the mem copy. Oh, yeah, hold on. This is a pointer, and I'm accessing its address. I should be accessing it like a pointer. So that's the problem. Probably. That was the problem. Okay. Alright. So now accessing temp alias test points us to this file, actually. And yeah, can't do it on a directory because we don't have proper directory support just yet. I guess that's fine for now. All right. So we're able to open the file and return a hard-coded file ID, and then we go to this hard-coded file ID, and then that is what handles the entire thing for us. Okay, so the next thing to do is the translation step into the file ID. So whenever we open a file that's aliased, we have two file descriptors, not just one. The one to the real file and the one that we have to refer to the real file. So the translator. So do we need to do that? I wonder. Is that strictly necessary? Like a translation step? I think so, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm going to experiment with that, but there's an ad coming up, so I'll be back in 3 minutes. Okay, we're back. Name of my ZUI and icon theme. ZUI is Synthwave 84. And the icon theme is one that I don't know about. Hold on. Let me get it. I actually don't know. I just installed one at random and I was like, yeah, that's good enough. Icon themes. Cat Puching. Is this the one? Cat Puchin icons. I haven't tried any others. Should I? The one thing that really bothers me about this is that you expect me to install an icon theme or a theme without even looking at it. It's just like, yeah, you want to install charmed icons? What's it look like? Oh, we can't tell you. Can we give you a link so you can see it? Maybe, if the person who made it bothered with putting that on their GitHub. It is cute. What was this one? Charmed. Let's try the charmed ones. Base. How do I configure it further? How do I bring up that thing again? I guess we're using the base ones. Oh, no, this is versions, but not themes. No, honestly, how do I do this? Icon theme here. Soft. They look exactly the same to me. Warm. They look exactly the same to me. Somebody let me know if you notice any difference whatsoever. Oh, I can preview them. I didn't notice. Warm. Okay, so there is a difference, so why am I not seeing it when I actually do the thing? I want soft ones. Alright. Oh, so it's just a difference in intensity. Alright, well, I guess I switched to charmed. Charmed, I'm sure. Alright. I still think you should give me a little preview inside the code editor itself. I don't know. Just, you know how it is. Anyway, nah, this wouldn't work. What I was planning on doing. Right, so when we have an alias in the file system, we are essentially working with two file descriptors. The one to the real file and the one to the alias, which translates to the one to the real file. I was thinking, can we just skip the translation? Like when we open, we just open this file instead, open the real file instead, and just give you a handle to that one, and from now on you just talk directly to that module. But no. We still need to go through this module. Number one, because we can apply transformations on the data. Which I added. I still don't know how I want to integrate them, but I added a bunch of functions that you can call instead of the default for reading, writing, and whatnot. You can override that. We would lose that when the entire point of transformations is that you alias a file, but you transform it somehow. Which means, actually, it's something that I'm doing inside my clipboard, where 0 is the oldest item in the clipboard, 2 is the newest, but if you go to latest, it's backwards. 2 is the oldest, 0 is the latest. So you can always refer to it as 0, or 1, or 2. Right? It makes it easier for you to do history with the clipboard by doing this for you. This is supposed to be a transformation. It points to the same files, but with different names because it's transforming them. Even for that matter, an alias could be a transformation in and of itself and not be hard-coded in here, but rather in here. But anyway, another reason that this wouldn't work is because, again, this file descriptor is to the global file, to the real file inside the module. No matter how many times you open the file, this file descriptor is always going to be the same, as long as it points to the same file. But when you open the file multiple times, we're translating that file descriptor into instances, which means different IDs to point to the same file, which then get all translated to the same ID. This one here is the same ID, so the translation still happens, and then it will point to a file that doesn't really exist in here, so I'm pretty sure if I remove this, it's not gonna work. But I might as well check. You can find some YouTube videos. Alpha, beta, gamma. Yeah, that's true. You should be able to find my normal YouTube videos on my channel. Yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, as expected, because this file descriptor then gets translated, but it was already translated, so it's being translated twice and retranslated only once, so it's wrong. Okay. Where do transformations fit in this is the correct question that I am not answering. All right. Let me think about how I would build a clipboard with this system. I can do it hard-coded in here, actually, where, yeah, I can literally just hard-code it. Right, where file 0 points to /clipboard /1. No, let's do 0 points to 2. 1 and 2. That's how you do the translation. 1 stays as 1, like that. They're not directories though, they're files. Right, so I should be able to go to TMP, I find these, and 0, wrong, 1, wrong, 2, wrong. All entirely wrong. 100% inaccurate. Wonderful. I don't know about this. I don't know about this system. All right, let me not consider this. Let me do aliases and then consider how these transformations apply later as I do them, and not right away, because this is just gonna be too much to deal with when I don't know how these fit in. So let me leave it like this. All right, file descriptor 666 should point me to the file that it should. Yes, I'm also live on Twitch right now. All right, there we go. Works again. Now all we need to do is again hold a translator from real file or aliased file to real file. Right, so to do that, it won't even be particularly difficult. I just need a hash map, I believe. Include data struct hash map. I'm going to have a static hash map alias map, hash map t, hash map t alias map. And then another thing that I need is to kind of reserve file descriptor thing. This thing. All right, that to give me the file descriptor. Hash file name path. And then all right, here I have file descriptors, so I'm just going to create the hash map if I don't have it. There's no alias map. We're going to create the alias map by hash map create with an initial capacity, this thing. And then we're going to hash map put I'm going to store the aliased file descriptor, which I'm going to need to allocate, actually. Okay. The alias file descriptor, which we reference from the real file descriptor. File descriptor ID with a size of 64, U64. All right. So we just store the pointer to the real file into this hash map with the ID for the file that we generated. And then, no, that code is still needed. Actually, hold on. Find entry. All right, here we go. If we don't find the file that we're trying to reference directly, then we're just going to try to access it through the hash map. Hash map get alias map using the file ID with size of a U64. And that returns a hash map node, I'm pretty sure, entry, which if I'm not mistaken can be chained. Yeah. Hey, how do we know the one that we need to look for though? I don't think there's going to be any collisions. So, all right, hold on. I'm not sure what this returns. Returns the value directly. Yep, so it actually already handles what I was trying to do. Okay, that's great. All right, so this is going to give me the file descriptor that I'm looking for. Which means I can't return it as part of this. This is a different return type. All right, so forget all that. All right, so essentially, when it is an aliased file, what we're going to do is we're going to try to find the entry. If we don't, we're going to try to resolve it as an alias. And if so, we are just going to that's not right either. None of this is right. Hold on. Kind of forgot a little something here. I already have a module file. All right. Do I need then a translation? In the module file, I can just store any information about aliasing the file directly here. The path and the file descriptor used to access that path. I don't need a translation table or anything like that. So none of that is even necessary. I just access the file inside of the current module as normal. It tells me it's an alias, so I resolve that alias, and I open that file into the m file alias info alias file descriptor. I keep this part as an address. I need this part, I need this part, I need this part. I don't need this anymore. All right, so when I'm going to open the file, I just add support for this. No, it's not a return either. It's a little bit more complex than that. I'm going to run a read operation on this thing using the buffer, using the size. That's going to have a return. That's going to return how many bytes it actually wrote, and I'm going to return that. But before I return that, I'm going to do this thing again, essentially. All right, when I'm reading, I'm going to do the same thing. Where I'm going to write, update the file descriptor, and return it. When I stat, I'm going to do the same thing. A smile, that's wrong. No, this is a little bit different. This uses the file alias info path. This one gets straight up returned because it's just giving us information about the file. We just returned the original file's information. And when we're supposed to close the file, we're not really doing anything when it comes to that, but if the file has a file descriptor, we're going to close that file descriptor. And that's it. Wait, why am I able to return a void? Has that always been a thing? It's weird. Anyway. If I did everything correctly, then we don't need any particular... I haven't finished writing the code, have I? So alias is now alias info. Like that. If I did everything correctly, then we have aliases in a very simple manner. That's gonna be a no. Alignment, oh my god, alignment fault. Man, go fuck yourself. Alignment fault. These are so annoying. Wait, no, actually, it's not what I thought. It didn't work. So the process crashed, and then somehow there's an alignment fault when a process crashes, which is a thing that I've noticed recently, and it's kind of very annoying, but yeah. That's kind of Alright, let me check my code real quick for any obvious errors. When I'm supposed to read from an alias, I just perform the read on that. Memcopy, return the file descriptor as I expected it. Boom. File descriptor is a pointer. This is not, so I turn it into a pointer. Boom. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And yep. Alright, so what is crashing? See, the crash handler is crashing, so that's kind of annoying. Because I don't know where it is crashing. Here, apparently, in the dwarf the code lines. Yeah, but where exactly? I feel like this thing should also tell me function names and like lines and whatnot to give me information on where exactly it's crashing, but it hardly ever works. So somewhere here, somewhere in this code, there is an alignment fault, which is causing an issue, and I don't know exactly where. I'm going to try to use GDB for this. My dude, what are we waiting for? Could not connect. No, info line, and then the crash line, what was it? Yeah, I don't remember. This one. This one. Line 278 of dwarf.c. 278. This thing is unaligned. Oh, fucking wonderful. Hopefully, that's the only problem there is. Yes, it is. Thank God. Okay. And even though we went through all that I fixed one line of code to fix the dwarf debugger, it still doesn't tell me what line of code it crashed at. So it's completely useless. Amazing. It may not be generating debug information, so that kind of doesn't help. I'm not generating debug information. Let's see if I can. I don't have the computer set up, so I just have an old monitor back there. That did nothing. That did absolutely nothing. That did also nothing. Oh wait, forgot an argument here. Which is... I'm always so surprised by how useless GDB is as a tool. It requires so much setup and barely tells you anything of use. Truly beautiful. D. Alright, now we have this, which can help me debug exactly where it's crashing. So unhelpful. This address, 409668. In chunk array create. Bro, what? I'm not even doing anything in this. What do you mean? How can this be crashing? It's probably memory corruption of some sort. Just... in main, chunk array create is crashing after read full file. So I'm assuming when reading the file, that's what's failing. I did all that just to get absolutely zero debug information to why everything is crashing. I love that. I love that that's just happening now. Alright. And if I had done it with GDB, it would have taken me like twice as long. Alright. Reading from alias file, and then you're going to tell me the ID for that. Okay. Okay. Thank you. You're going to read from it. You're going to mem copy into the file descriptor from here, but you're going to keep the current file ID. Process allocated, and then process has crashed, which means it never got to this point. Oh, that's interesting. Aliased file to home projects code bring code main.c. Yep. And I'm opening it into this file descriptor. It never fails, seemingly. Then it should have opened a new file with this file descriptor. Did that maybe not get saved or something? Alias with file descriptor 266. This giant ass file descriptor becomes 266. And then, I don't get it, when you're trying to read the file, what are you receiving? Aliased file, and then it crashes, before it's even able to read the file. No, genuinely, what happened? No, actually, what happened? I have no idea what happened here. You open the file, you copy this, you get the new file descriptor. I can even make you print here, just to make sure that the crash isn't happening here. you return a success, so you open the file, and then you crash. And this is the address to the stack. So it seems like it's stack corruption, maybe? But why? It's not like I've modified the program. All of this was also working like 10 minutes ago, so that's a little bit weird. Hadn't noticed this. This is getting called, so we do have the file being opened. None of this gets called. At which point, read full file. Is the size wrong? Maybe I allocated the wrong size. $24. What do you mean 24? Starting to see what the problem is. Pretty sure this file is bigger than slightly like 36 bytes. It's a little bit bigger than 36 bytes. So that's probably the wrong size. Oh. I'm copying from the path, not from the file descriptor. Well, that's probably the problem. Copying from the wrong place will probably give you garbage data. Yep. Very much did. Alright. So, in the end, the code actually ended up being a lot simpler than I thought, you know, stupid mistakes aside. When you have an alias file, you just keep a track of where that file's real path is, and for convenience, you keep a file descriptor to the real file. Whenever you get called, you call internally the real file. It's that simple. Now, like I mentioned yesterday, there's supposed to be data transformations, which maybe I need to kind of define how these work a little bit better, I think. Most likely. I just haven't defined them very well. But file transformations, where you can change something about a file when you're opening, reading, or writing it, without actually modifying the original file. Again, this was supposed to be so you can do aliases simpler, so you can do actual data transformations. Like I mentioned, it was for the for building a language server protocol where we alias the entire project directory that we're trying to do syntax highlighting or formatting or whatever into this folder, and then this one is also linked to this folder, but it applies an extra transformation on it. It kind of modifies the data that it receives in some way or another. So in order to do that, right, so when you do, this was supposed to be syntax, by the way. When I access language syntax main.c, this will read the original main.c file, parse it, and then, well, it will, read the original file and then parse it and return the parsed information. So that's what it's supposed to do. So the transformation gets applied after. You read the original file, then you apply the transformation. Combining those two concepts is maybe a little bit more complex, so I won't do it until I need it, and I'll just build it however I need in the moment. For the time being, we should have aliases, but we have aliases for files. Directories are a different story, and modules are yet another different story. So I'll have to take a look at that. I'm going to use that monitor behind me. It's connected to a Raspberry Pi, but that's supposed to be running this thing. But I kind of don't like the Raspberry Pi anymore. We're not friends anymore, so it's just sitting there. But that's really what it's for. So soon, surely, I'll get back to developing drivers for the Raspberry Pi. Actually, I think I might. I think I found a way to do it without reference, but hopefully QEMU can help me a little bit. It's really hard to develop drivers for hardware that you've never seen before. You can't find any reference or how it works or anything besides Linux kernel code. So, not exactly the easiest thing to do. That's why I haven't supported the Pi's real hardware in a while. But if I do that soon, which I think I might have found a way to actually figure out what the hell I'm doing, might start using the Raspberry Pi more soon. Alright. Here's the problem that I'm having. When I have a path that looks like this, it's a very simplified path, but when I have a path that looks like this, each element of the path is technically a completely different concept inside of my file system. This is a module, this is a directory, and this is a file. So obviously these two make perfect sense. Module kind of makes perfect sense, but it does mean that any kind of logic that I have, I need to apply 3 times. For instance, right now I'm able to alias a file, but I'm not able to alias a directory. And I'm able to, even if I'm able to alias a directory, I can't alias a module. So that's a little bit annoying, and hopefully I'm kind of working towards being able to standardize this a little bit, but honestly, it's not looking amazing. But what this means is, if I want to apply aliases to directories, I'll need to start properly supporting directories inside the file system. Inside this virtual file system, right? So I can have aliases and all that stuff. All right. So that should probably be the next thing I work on, so that I can point to main.c here. Right now I can't do that. All right, so I'm gonna do that, but there is a break coming up. So I'm going to run an ad. I'll be back in 5 or so minutes.
Iki_SY followed your channel.
Here we are. OBS is being weird. Oh no, it's not. I just messed it up. All right, there we go. Okay. So I managed to just implement aliased files into my file system, and as the application developer, you don't have to worry about whether something is aliased or not. As it should be. But that's files. Folders are a little bit different because being a little weird when it comes to folders. So I need to see if I can slightly improve my code to handle folders a little bit better. Before that though, I remember I made all these things deprecated yesterday. Are they fully deprecated? Am I using them anywhere? Can I delete them and they don't do anything? I guess we'll see after I finish. Alright, Zed. How is there a new version of Zed? So yesterday, I started the stream by talking about how Zed gets a new update every time I open it. And actually, there was an update when I said that. That was 24 hours ago. Less than 24 hours ago. Now there's an update too. That's not a bad thing, actually. It's really good that they keep... You can actually see them adding new features, fixing bugs. So it's nice, it's great. There's an update every time. Now I do wonder who
Gretz 0
pushed an
followed your
update...
channel.
Who pushed an update to this code editor on a Friday night? That should not be a thing. I don't think you had anything so important that you needed to do that, but maybe. Maybe there was a vulnerability I didn't know about. Do we have a release notes? Added support for GPT 5.5 and GPT 5.5 Pro via the OpenAI provider. Oh, that was very important to do. I am sure that the person who had to stay late on a Friday evening to do this was very happy about it. Fixed agent threads appearing to be missing after upgrading to a parallel agent's sidebar. Oh no. Wow, these were really critical bugs. But either way, you can see there's an update on the 22nd, update on the 23rd, update on the 24th. Today's the 25th, yes. So this update actually probably came out while I was streaming or something, I don't know. Was it really that important to push an update for GPT 5.5 and to push 2 different updates on the same day? 3 different updates on this day? Was that really necessary? On a Friday too, what was that? Did GPT 5.5 like come out today or? It did. A day ago. I'm sure it's incredible and completely groundbreaking. Hold on, let me... I've been using GPT 5.5 for the last day, and it is so over for software engineers. If you're not using AI, you're missing out. You will be replaced by someone who is using AI. Because, again, I've been using it and it's amazing. It's never been this good. And seen. Yeah, I'm sure GPT 5.5 adds a lot of very incredible, groundbreaking features, such as improvements of 0.0001% if you squint hard enough. Are you using AI? I don't think he's using AI. Everybody, look. I don't think he's using AI. This guy? Right here? This guy right here? This guy right here? Right here? Right here? This dude? Not using AI. Fucking crazy. Insane. I don't think he uses AI. I've never once seen him prompt. Not once. I don't think he knows what an agent even is. He's getting replaced. He's getting left behind. You're getting left behind. Don't wag your tail at me. Feel sad he's gonna be left behind, poor thing. Alright, so let me just check that everything that I added is correct. It is. I want to get rid of that. Well, no, I want to turn this into a to-do, maybe. I think he's upset about being left behind because he's not using GPT 5.5. He's still on 5.4. Crazy. Crazy shit. Absolutely crazy, Jester. What do you mean you're not using AI? All right. I'm not gonna commit this part. I'm gonna commit this part and this part, and then also this. FS alias support. Alignment fix. All right. What was I even doing? Actually, hold on. I want to see this. What do they claim they added with it? Oh, it automates repetitive coding tasks to save you time. Oh my god. Wow. By the way, I love that AI marketing nowadays goes only towards developers and coding because literally nobody else wants to use it. I've seen... Oh, here it is. 5.5. Okay, hold on. Here we go. The last time I looked at one of these, comparing GPT-5 to GPT-3 and 4, it kind of looked like this. Where you have 5, you had 4, and you had 3. The graphs were AI generated, and so it looked like this. But when they actually fixed the AI generated graphs because they were all wrong, it ended up looking a little bit more like this. Where 5 is only a slight improvement over 3, but 4 is so shitty that it ended up looking like a major improvement. So I'm very excited to see what great improvements GPT 5.5 has made. And I closed the page, didn't I? Oh no, I'm so sorry. The smartest and most intuitive to use model yet. It understands what you're trying to do faster, can carry more of the work itself. It excels at writing and debugging code, researching online, analyzing data, creating documents and spreadsheets, operating software, moving across tools until a task is finished. That was a whole load of nothing. Instead of carefully managing every step, you can give GPT-5 a messy multi-part task and trust it to plan, use tools, check its work, navigate through ambiguity, and keep going. Definitely. Definitely. You can definitely do that. I'm sure it's gonna handle that just fine. It's especially strong with agentic coding, computer use, knowledge work, and early scientific research. Computer use. Right. See, I don't really use computers, so what else is it good for? Alright, here it is. This feels completely unlabeled. %82 of what? This is completely unlabeled data. Number high. Number low. What the fuck does this mean? Guess what? GPT 5.5 is 7.6% better than 5.4. Refuses to elaborate, leaves. There you go. I don't use AI, I'm just mocking this shit because I knew something like this was going to happen. It was going to be complete nonsense. So I just decided to mock it for a little bit because I saw in the release notes that Zed had to push a very important update on a Friday night to support GPT 5.5. They're building the global infrastructure for agentic AI, making it possible for blah 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 blah. Okay, this one is actually labeled. This one actually tells you some information. I'm still so confused by this. GPT 5.5 is 73.1% on our internal scale. Give us $1 trillion right now. Did we mention 73.1 up from 68.5? Claude doesn't even figure on our internal scale. Gemini, not even on our internal scale. GPT-5, 73.1. Look, I understand that you probably generated this with GPT 5.5 or maybe even 6, since they probably have that already in the works. Did you not read it? Did you not read your article about GPT 5.5 to realize, hey, we're just spouting fucking nonsense in this entire area? We're literally saying nothing? We have percentages, completely unlabeled, meaningless percentages here. Nobody thought about that. Even, I'm assuming nobody wrote it, I'm assuming an AI wrote it, but did no one actually read the damn thing? It just published it without looking at it. There's like a... Anthropic is 1 trillion. Okay, I didn't ask about Anthropic's valuation. I asked for OpenAI's valuation, so why am I getting results on Anthropic's? $800 billion company, and they publish completely meaningless data like this. Because no one in the $800 billion company was able to proofread what the AI generated. It's so beautiful. Anyway, the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index tells us that the index goes up based on the number of tokens, like this. This is 5.5, it's better than everyone else. Are we really measuring the number of tokens? I love that we actually measure the number of tokens when it comes to AI. I don't use AI to give enough of a shit about this, to be honest, but it feels like counting the number of lines of code. I think that anyone who's ever written a line of code can tell you, or who's written 10 lines of code, can tell you that the number of lines of code that you write is completely meaningless. If you count performance by the number of lines of code, you're mocked relentlessly for it. Ask Elon Musk about it. He knows about that. And yet, now it's like, yeah, number of tokens is important for performance. Number of tokens, important. Performance, yes. Also, 73%. The model's coding strength shows up especially in codecs, where it can take on engineering work ranging from implementation to refactors and debugging, testing, and validation. Early testing suggests GPT-5 is better at behaviors at the behaviors real engineering work depends on, like holding context across large systems, reasoning through ambiguous failures, checking assumptions with tools, and carrying changes through surrounding code base. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I deal with working on a relatively large code base, which requires a lot of decisions. Like, I need to remember stuff inside my brain. This is a metric that makes me good at it. This is what matters. Holding information inside my brain is what matters. Also, the number of words that I speak is important. This is exactly the kind of engineering work that people are doing out there. I'm not an engineer, but I do software engineering, and I can tell you that's what's important. The amount of stuff that you remember and the amount of words that you speak. No. It's nice. It's nice. Yeah, looks good. Um, I really love how I love the lack of soul in this game. Really, yeah, it's amazing. I love how they have random beams coming out of their asses that are supposed to hit you, I'm assuming, but they're actually too short for that. Yeah, that's I love the completely meaningless animations. Yeah, they really bring the whole game together. I'm loving this, actually. Game created by Pietro Schirano, CEO of Magic Path. So they didn't even create this themselves. The CEO of this fucking company was like, I made this thing, it's so cool. And OpenAI was like, yes it is, let us feature it. Sure. Anyway. Genuinely feels like I'm working with a higher intelligence. Relatively speaking, I don't disagree with you. And there's almost a sense of respect. Listen, I've insulted you enough. It is noticeably smarter and more persistent than GPT 5.4, with stronger coding performance and more reliable tool use. It stays on task for significantly longer without stopping early, which matters most for complex, long-running work our users delegate to Cursor. Wow. It has 1% less ADHD. What is the number of tool yields? I am genuinely so impressed that AI companies were like, wait, metrics for performance for our AI agents. Let's just make a bunch up. Sometimes let's not even make up a metric, just put numbers on a screen. And that's good enough. Oh, they got cybersecurity going too. Cool. Wow. More percentages. Wow. Well, all right, that was enough of looking at GPT-5. Let's talk a little bit about what I have done so far. I've been streaming for 2 hours, and I actually produced 30%. On top of that, I spoke about 5,000 words, and I took an estimated 7,000 breaths. On top of that, I did that 1.1% more than yesterday, and also 67%. Give me $1 trillion right now. I don't know what you're waiting for. Just give me $1 trillion. Clearly. What do you want? 68%? Fine, 68%. Hold on. 68% right there. Oh, and by the way, my competitors do not even figure in my internal tools, in my internal benchmarks. Can you believe that? Yeah. Programmers that don't have access to my internal benchmark do not figure on it. Whereas I am getting a 69%, 70%. And people are actually like fooled into believing that this is the future. The more I look into AI, the more I believe that it is a scam. And I'm surprised that anyone actually believes it, because there's just so much nonsense in that entire field that it's hard to find anything of value in it. I'm sure there is. If you're a scammer, for example, I'm sure you love AI. But anything of actual value inside AI, I can't really say I have seen anything like that. Alright, how about we get my stats up to 80% today? Maybe even 81%. Compared to yesterday's 73%. Just totally not a number that I just made up with absolutely no meaning to it. Alright, so I have aliases now inside of my systems. Files, but not directories. Why am I recompiling every time I didn't even make a change? Why am I recompiling? Alright, so this file is actually aliased, and it's accessed through... Wait. This file. Whereas in reality, the file is here. That's not it. I just made that up, didn't I? That's not where it actually is. The real file is... No, not there either. The real file is here. Alright, so what is that main.c that's showing up there? I'm a little bit confused by where that's coming from. What is this? Alright, I have no idea what this file is supposed to be doing here, but I don't think it is supposed to be here. So we'll get rid of it. Alright, so I can alias files, but not folders. Probably because of a few bugs here and there that I'll have to fix. Alright, so alias test, I want you to point to this now. To the folder, not to the file. And when I'm done, I expect to be able to go into TMP alias test and inside of it find the contents of this folder, which are not the ones that I just showed there. Those are wrong. All right. Alright, so what I saw the bug was before is when I try to access a... Well, first off, That would have never, no, that did work. Okay, yeah, because I need to go in here. But if I try to open this file, it won't work. See, for example, because that was wrong. It won't work because this file doesn't actually exist. It tries to open this as if it was a whole file. It doesn't differentiate between the directory and not the directory. So I need to fix that first of all. Hello, Nextaman. How's it going? Alright, because I'm essentially just going through all the files that are defined for a module, and if it fits the name, then that's it, we found it. But that's actually not accurate. I always forget how to use this function, but give me the full path, and then seek to path and this character. This should be able to split it correctly so that we get only the directory and not the directory plus the file name. Yeah, alias test main.c, that is correct. I have to build a string slice out of this information. OS dev is going well, focusing a lot on the file system right now, so that's been fun, mostly. A lot of interesting things. I'm building a file system like I would like, similar to Unix, but better. And no, it's my own OS. Everything is done by me. Alright. There we go. Alright, that should be const. That should help me use only the name of the file that I'm trying to access, or the folder that I'm trying to access on the top level of my module. Again, I don't really support directories yet. They're kind of very... we don't support like files inside of directories. There's not a whole lot of support for stuff like that. But I should be able to find directories that I'm looking for by doing a slice literal match, comparing this to file name zeta, case insensitive. So again, I'm going to look for alias test, ignoring the main.c for the time being. I don't really have the logic for handling that yet. I'll have to see how to handle that, but I'm not sure how to do that yet, so. Let's see. Must have done it wrong. Right, so first entry holds the file that we're actually looking for. It's supposed to be alias test. Alias test dash. Yeah, that's incorrect. That should be. That did not work. No, absolutely did not work. No, it's all virtual file system. I'm not working on anything physical, so I don't really care much about the way that they're stored or anything like that. I see. Yeah, this was supposed to be next and next, like that. And now I should be able to add a -1 to this to get rid of the final thing here. -1. Wait. That's wrong. It's -1. No, -1. Looking for alias test. Hmm. All right. I hadn't thought about this. Damn. Now that I'm actually starting to support directories with this entire like virtual file system architecture thingy, helper, library, whatever. Um, I'm trying to open a directory, not a file. That's not really supported. You don't open a directory. You don't need to do that. Um, because I'm discarding part of the path. That is a problem. All right, I'm not sure how to handle this. Find entry. I pass into it alias test, but that's not necessarily correct. So maybe I do this conversion outside of that. I do it static inline string slice path first component with a const char path. All right, so that's gonna do that. That is going to take a full path and give us only the first component of that. Which we can then use to do other components later. This part can stay as it was. Just use a string slice instead. So yes, using a string slice literal match, comparing the slice to the string in a case insensitive manner. And then whenever we call this, path first component, passing this into it, and this into that. All right, kind of gonna need to do the same thing in other places. There's only one. Yeah, in stat, where all right, that's how we handle if we're just trying to list the current directory. Otherwise, we're just trying to handle the top level file. And next should be a string slice from the path plus top length Hold on, I'm not sure about any of this. All right, this part I can do manually. All right, so if we're trying to access alias test slash main.c, we'll need to open the real path slash main.c. Which we can do by concatenating string from literal is what I want, path. All right, so this should ensure that if we're trying to access this, we first get the correct directory from alias test, and then that points us to the directory that it is trying to alias, and then it attaches this to it. And to make sure, we're going to print the path that it is going to try to open. So I have a feeling that this might not work, and a completely different file has an error. Oh, okay. Because, yeah. No, that's correct. Slice from string. And slice from literal. There's more. Slice from string. And slice from literal. I'll need to revisit all this code. It's kind of shit, but kind of need it to work first, then I can make it pretty. Or not. Yeah, that's not a good sign. When everything is black, it means that it already failed to load certain files. That's not great.
J35U54N6U10 followed your channel.
Yep, I see why. Oof, I thought that worked. It did not. Hello, G35U54N6U10. This is... Wait, hold on. This is the correct color. So this loaded fine, but then I go in here and it didn't load fine. How? 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 Explain this to me. How did that happen? That makes no sense. The file opened, but then it didn't open? What? Um, Let me try without this. Just do that. Nope. Still doesn't work. Alright, so I must have broken something else. Oh, yeah, I did. I'm modifying the path when I shouldn't. Still doesn't work. Alright, let me reset you real quick. Till I get it to work again, and then redo the damn changes I just made and see if it... Oh my god. Stop doing that. Stop not working. That's literally the same thing as it was before. Alright, now, this entire thing has been kind of shit, so let's not do any of it. Could keep debugging the shitty code that I just wrote, or start over. I choose to start over. Alright. Okay, now this works again. This does not, because we're back to not having support for folders. Okay. Okay. Um, I want a function that gives me a string slice first path component out of a const char path. So since it's the first path component, the beginning is always going to be the path. And it needs to be cast like that. Alright. And then the length of it depends on seek to path this, which will try to find the next instance of this character or reach the end of the string. So the first path component is simply going to be next minus path in size. Minus, if next has a value, 1, otherwise nothing. Because we also need to remove this character, if that character is found or not. Let me see if I'm doing that part correctly. Need to make you static. Ideally also inline, actually. It never prints a damn thing. Not a single thing is it printing. Or am I wrong? First path component empty. First path component empty. First path component empty. Cool. So yeah, it's not working. Why though? Path empty, next empty. Path empty, next empty. Why is it always empty? Oh, because it's supposed to be this whole thing. Okay, I was passing the wrong argument to it. That's why. Alright. So first path component is just this. There's nothing else after that, so that makes sense. First path component is alias test. There's nothing else after that. That makes sense. And next is main.c. That is correct. All right. And yes, I want to get the root file for that. So this shouldn't use a path like that. It should use a string slice for the path, where it does a slice literal match between the path, the file name data, and this. I inverted the condition before. String compare returns 0 when it's correct. String literal match returns true. That's probably what the issue was the entire time. That's what the issue was. Amazing. Yeah, do that. That, and this condition becomes if this is going to have issues too. So again, this is a slice from literal. And this is a string slice from string. And slice from literal. Slice from string. Slice from string. and that. All right. I literally inverted a condition, then I undid all the code, and then I realized my mistake, and I rewrote all the code almost exactly as it was. Amazing. Anyway, here's what I need to work. Okay, when we're opening the file, okay, so we get the first file component, which is, in this case, alias test. And then we need to evaluate the next part, which is main.c. Here's the thing about that. If mfile entry type is equal to entry directory, I don't support that yet. We'll have to add some of that functionality soon, but for now we're just going to return an error, sorry for that. However, if we're doing an alias, that's a different story, because the alias, we're not doing the actual processing of the text, of the data. Instead, the alias is doing that. So what we need to do, I'm literally rewriting the same code word for word. It's incredible. If the entry in question is a directory, we can assume that we're not trying to open the directory, we're trying to open the something else after it. So string slice next is going to be am I modifying the path at all? No, I'm not. Okay. I can actually do this part manually. I don't care too much about it. Path seek to path this thing. And now I'm going to need to construct a new string from the original one, and let me just do a string format, it's better. I'm hating all the code that I'm writing, but whatever. All right, that should concatenate the translated path. So from alias test, it turns into this thing, and then on top of it, attach main.c, and then give us this thing slash main.c, which should give me the correct file. Nope. Oh. So whenever I add this symbol, turns out I didn't need it. When I don't add it, turns out I did need it. Wait. No. Feel like that wasn't correct. Failed to navigate to projects, code, brain code, alias test main.c. Yeah, that's not correct. Yeah, so being clever here kind of hurt me. That didn't really work. All right, let's do a string slice instead. A string slice, which is going to be made up of first.data plus first.length, the length of strlen, okay, so I can actually slice from literal this thing. Yep, we're back to working. Great, wonderful, amazing, beautiful. All right. So yeah, whenever we're doing an alias, we translate the component that that has the alias, and everything else we forward to the aliased component. So alias test main.c becomes, well, home projects code brain code main.c. All right, and funnily enough, if we have subdirectories, they're not supported yet. Now, does everything else still work as it should? First off, directory listing does not yet forward, which means I won't be able to go to this and see the contents of the actual folder yet. I also won't be able to stat anything. But mostly I want to see if the clipboard still works as expected, because technically this did modify its code. Looks correct to me. Alright. Can I then add this logic? So that we can stat more than just one directory. S is not a directory with the path. We return 0, because we didn't actually give you any data. Otherwise, if the file has an alias, we're going to do a lot of what I did before with the full path and all that. This thing. I'm also going to string free the additional string. I'm going to call, is it list entries? No, this is a local function. I need to call the syscall function. which is dir list. On the full path data with the buffer that I'm given, the size that I'm given, the offset that I'm given, and return that. However, if it is a directory, but it's not the root directory, and it's not an alias, once again, subdirectory listing not yet supported by vanilla VFS, and return a 0. All right, let me see all this. There we go. That's nice. Okay. I can list the contents of this directory, although I'm pretty sure stat may not be working about it. These are showing up as blue. I can open them though. I can open them. There should be some subdirectories in there. Let me see if that works. Dump is a file, build.c is a file, symbol, sim is a file, .git is a directory, so... Okay, it works, it works. Nice. Alright, so I have alias directories. That was surprisingly easy to implement. Okay. Yeah, cool. Funnily enough, I can list the contents of a subdirectory if it is if it's an alias that points to a module that actually implements that functionality. But this module by itself does not implement that functionality. So that won't work on this module. And the main issue that I have with doing something like this in this module is that the file entries that I have listed are literally just in an array that contains the root directory. Do I do the same thing, like an array for each subdirectory? Do I do a file name for each subdirectory? I have no idea. I'll have to figure that out a little bit more. And frankly, it's not really what I need right now. So it really does not matter. For the time being, I'm okay with just leaving an error message saying this is not implemented yet, and when I do need it, I'll implement it. Okay, interesting. So, I'm again able to do this. Come on, Linux. I'm able to save the file, which should save... Yep, saves the changes to the correct file using the correct alias. And I'm also able to see the contents of a directory. Now, why is everything blue? Maybe it's not fully correct. I feel like that shouldn't be all blue. Stat, what are you doing? I feel like that was probably wrong. It was always returning the stat for a directory when that wasn't necessarily correct. That's even worse. I think that is correct. Okay, this is showing as a file, this is showing as a directory, and all of its contents are showing as files. That is not correct. Oh, wait, I'm not doing that whole like translation, so everything is getting stat from the directory. Okay, that should do it properly. Okay, there we go. Now the files are showing as files and the folders are showing as folders. Cool. Cool. Alright. Alright, so I ended up implementing aliases. They work surprisingly well, considering how... I wouldn't call them hacked together. I would say they required minimal code. Yep. Yep. Yep, 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 yep. As OpenAI's press release would say, I implemented it at 80%, whereas yesterday I did it at 70%. And if that sounds completely meaningless, it's meant to be. Also give me $1 trillion. Imagine you streaming as your custom operating system. I would love to, but damn. Yeah, that sounds like fun. I feel like I already, okay, no offense towards Twitch or YouTube. I already hate having to do everything from just a streamer point of view, where I just have to open OBS, do a little bit of setup, very user friendly, and then learn a little bit of the technical side, like what the fuck a bitrate is supposed to be, resolutions, and formats. Very basic stuff. You can find guides for it if you really need them. That's already a pain in the ass because it breaks every other day. Imagine doing that, but with like having to actually do the encoding yourself. That sounds like such a pain in the ass. But if I port FFmpeg, maybe. I think I started on OS development. Honestly, you just do. But the OS Dev Wiki can have a little few pointers to where to start. I'm not gonna lie, a few people have asked me that question. I always point them towards that. I haven't gotten feedback if that's helped or not. Not as far as I can remember. I do have the memory of a goldfish, so maybe they haven't, I just don't remember. But anyway, we have file aliases. And something that I wasn't expecting to have just yet, the folders act properly like folders. Which means tomorrow, officially, I can start working on my language server, non-server protocol, my language file system protocol. To have, syntax highlighting and other features available. Now, sadly, I do think I'm going to have to do it as a kernel process because the file system is currently limited to kernel processes. I'm still building it, to be fair, so I'm not really ready to move it to user space. So yeah, for the time being, it's just gonna be a kernel application. It's just gonna be inside of the kernel. It's not gonna be a big deal. Might actually take a little bit of time to move kernel processes outside of the kernel itself, put them in their own folder. so that eventually they don't have to ship with the kernel as part of the same executable, and I can make them a little bit better. And then also this one, again, should not be part of the kernel itself. It's just a limitation that I have for the time being. Um, Hold on. I'm gonna consider this. I'm going to consider how I can do it. If I'm able to do it in user space, that would be great. I could even do it from within the compiler itself, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. For now, I'm planning, if I really need to, I'll put the language server inside of the kernel, and I'll fix it afterwards, once I actually move all that stuff to user space. All right. That's gonna be it for today. I'm gonna see if I'm able to move it to user space. I'm gonna consider that a little bit later. But for the time being, that's gonna be it. Tomorrow, I'm finally gonna get started on this damn language protocol, for which I built aliases. Turns out, might even be easier than I thought. I guess we'll see. All right. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'm going to be streaming at the same time as tomorrow. At the same time as today. Tomorrow I'm going to be streaming at the same time as today, which means today I streamed at the same time as tomorrow, I guess. If you want to get philosophical about it. He's done. He's done. All right. That's 3 p.m. Central European Time, 2 p.m. UK time. We're going to work on, finally, replacing language server protocols, which I learned yesterday are less reusable than I thought. So really, they have zero advantages, as with most things that Microsoft develops. All right, thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.